Hello and welcome to the third episode of Sports Analytics Society's Roundup. I am your host today, Peter Majors, alongside Matt Stanzione. And so we have a very, very exciting guest today in popular MLB Twitter personality and MLB analytics consultant, Codify, aka Michael Fisher. Michael, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, it's probably better than I could do. Thanks for inviting me, guys. I own and operate Codify. We work with, it's over 100 guys this year. I don't know what it's going to end up being because we're still in spring training, but we're just kind of bridging the gap. There's so many different ways the guys get the numbers, talk about the numbers. Everyone thinks about them differently and has different capacities, and we're just trying to bridge that gap. We love the game, and we found a little slot there that we can add value, and we're doing it until we can't do it anymore.
That's great. That's great. For the first few episodes, we've had our athletic director come on. We've had a football guy come on. But now, as we kind of get closer to the MLB season, spring training, you can just feel it. All the pictures coming out from all the reporters, and just the excitement's building around the sport right now. And so I'm really excited to have a baseball guy on as we kind of get this podcast off the ground. Could you kind of tell us a little bit more about the Heatmaps you're known for? Okay, so like what the origin story is there, kind of how that developed into something that became a personalized service, whereas many fans think they can just go online to Baseball Savant and see a 4-block strike zone and say, oh, this guy gets whiffs down in the zone. How does that become a personalized thing for pitchers that you work with?
Right. Actually, if you watched the World Series last year, Fox tried to do it themselves and had the little 9-block ones that weren't too hot. There's still a big need today, but the origin is back to a family reunion that I went to in 2010, and meeting this woman that my uncle had married, his second marriage, and oh, my boy pitches for the A's. Like, oh, that's nice. Is it T-ball? Turned out to be Dan Straley. I don't know if you know who that is.
Oh, yeah.
I thought it was a practical joke because I've loved baseball my whole life. And, she couldn't have said anything better. And she was surprised I knew him. I got to know him. But for years, as he progressed up through the minors, he's like, I'm not messing around. I have a fastball and a slider. I'm rising through. And there wasn't a lot of data out there back then, as you guys probably know. Once he kind of hit a wall, got designated for assignment twice in a week, he called me up and he said, I know you're doing a lot of work in the banking, analytics side. I know you love baseball. Here's a bunch of numbers. I got some people telling me to raise my arm. I got some people telling me to lower my arm. My catchers are arguing with what I throw. I can't get any signal through the noise. Can you help me as an outside voice? And so you mentioned Fangraphs as an example. I open up Fangraphs and just see what they had, and they had some interesting things, but it was all historical, and it was all like, did you do this against this batter, or did all right-handers do it against all right-handed batters? We started. The first ones are really ugly, but just started stepping through. Well, if I were to create these maps that you're describing, envisioning, that have been around forever since, what was that video game, 2005 MVP Baseball, I think it was, had these cool maps. Like, that's really neat. Imagine if you could know where your stuff played against each guy. So it evolved that way. The first ones were horrible, the second ones were horrible, but we started walking through, well, what if we had this component? What if we had that component? What if I listen to them and lower my arm and throw faster, but it changes the shape of my pitch? What's that going to do? And the teams definitely back then couldn't answer those questions with anything other than kind of a poker face, slap on the butt, keep the ball down. That's what they used to say back then. Like, yeah, you don't really do that anymore. So anyway, there was a need there. I helped Dan. This is probably a longer answer than you bet on. But I helped Dan for a couple of years, and he's walking around with these maps, and guys, there's millions of dollars at stake. So when they see some guy throw 92 and getting guys out and flashing these little heat maps, they wanted to know what those were all about. And it spread to Sean Doolittle and Blake Trinan and guys that just had all-star years using this stuff ahead of time, and it snowballed from there.
Yeah, I was kind of doing some research before this podcast, just to get all the simple questions out of the way. And I noticed one of the people you worked with is Yasmani Grandal, notably the only non-pitcher. So I was wondering kind of how that relationship works from the other side of the battery mate.
Yeah, there's actually been several catchers. You'll find a couple others on the banner, and then there are some private ones. The catcher dynamic is so interesting. The first catchers that we worked with, I remember one agent tried to connect me with Matt Moore, who was thrown to Posey at the time. And I can't really go into details about what Posey did to the Heatmaps when he saw them. They involved his bodily fluids. He did not, yeah. The catchers are alpha males, and like, we know better. It doesn't even, I'm not going to evaluate what you have here. We're going to do what I do, because he came all the way around to his last season actually asking Kevin Gosman and Logan Webb for the Heatmaps. Let's bring him into all the meetings and see what the outside voice says. Yasmani he's at the top of the alpha male spectrum, or whatever you want to call it. But somehow we got through that. He actually used them for hitting as well. He said, if I buy Heatmaps for some of the pitchers, will you give me some as a hitter against different pitchers? And if you look at his batting that year, I mean, he had 420 on base. He started to learn that area where guys were throwing it, he was hitting it hard right at guys. That wasn't luck. It was a bad place for him to be swinging, even though you get the adrenaline from a hard hit ball. And he started laying off those pitches. Anyway, again, a long answer. Catcher has this whole dynamic of handling his pitchers and then grabbing a bat in between innings and trying to contribute in different ways. So what I love about working with the catchers, though, is removing that hurdle of, because there's many pitchers that have the catchers are against it and they want to call their own thing. And now you talked earlier about the rule changes we might get into, but imagine a 15-second pitch clock. You just got the ball back from the catcher. You won't have the luxury of doing a very long walk, but you kind of collect yourself, look in, you got 10 seconds left. The guy's putting a finger down. You're like, I don't want to throw that. I don't want to throw that. You're running out of time. So to get the catchers on board has been big in the past. It's going to be gigantic for Codify in the future, and frankly for all the batteries to get on the same page.
Yeah, and then transitioning off that, if a pitcher doesn't want to throw a pitch and then they step off, there's also the new rule where, pitchers can't have more than 2 disengagements per plate appearance. What are your thoughts on that, combined with the pitch clock? What do you think we could see? I feel like we could see some weird stuff this season.
Oh, yeah. It's people that haven't thought this through, even if they've heard about the rules, I think are going to turn the game on for the first time and go, what is happening right now? This game looks different. Not so much the bigger bases, but where are the shifts? Where are what do you mean this guy gets to go to second base because he tried to pick him off on the third step off? Or what's this big clock that's going off? Or last season, which I think will fit in really well with this, last season, experimentally with a new client, who I can't mention specifically, he scripted pitches using Codify, scripted the first 3 pitches of each at bat. And again, probably shouldn't give too much away, but he threw a shutout, and they're too much of a hint there. But it's intriguing to think about that, of like, have your arguments, have your throwdowns like before the game, and say, hey, this is how we're going to attack, and be open to, if the guy moved up in the box, like I can't tell you that he's going to do that ahead of time, but the catcher sees it. So just everybody working in sync is going to be amazing. The step off thing, can you imagine Ricky Henderson with these rules?
Oh, he would go crazy.
Yeah. I mean, okay, so you stole 200 bases. Okay. It's going to be really interesting to watch. I watched some of the minor league games, but I mean, you only get a strong hint of what it's going to be like when the best in the world are using these new rules. It's going to be hard to, if you pull up a 2019 game and then watch baseball this year, you're going to really see like just the stark differences. Not to mention the ball, which is unfortunately a big component of what I do. I have to watch for signs that MLB is messing with the baseball, which they have. Unfortunately, they own the ball manufacturer and have done some things that, let's just say in good faith, but whether that is or
Yeah,
not.
I'm sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll just, yeah. But I have to know that ahead of time. I mean, if they're, the pitches in 2019 that you would never tell a guy to throw because of the rubber ball or whatever that they used that year, you could throw in 2021 and 2022 and get guys to hit 300-foot fly balls and get easy out. So the system is constantly watching for all that stuff. I'm trying to work back to your original question, which you can tell my coffee's working today. I'm watching these rule changes, like the shift change. I'm trying to anticipate the effects of these things ahead of time to tell these guys, because they go to the team and they go, well, they can't shift anymore. So how should I change how I pitch? And they're, you get a blank stare, or you get kind of a creative BS confident answer that has nothing behind it. And so I'm trying to do it more scientifically. We can see where guys pitched, how they handled different pitches, but until you see what the batters decide they want to try to do, because some guys won't change and some guys will, you don't really know. So I have to build a system that's guessing as well as it can, but then watching for signs of guys adapting. The pitch clock, your original question, is a potentially a humongous distraction for pitchers and catchers, especially pitchers who are trying to throw pitches with conviction. And that's just, they've never, I mean, the guys that were up that haven't gone through the minors very recently and at least played with the pitch clock a bit, this is just an alien world to be like, what do you mean I have to throw this ball in 15 seconds?
Yeah, I
And-
was gonna say, like, it's for some of the younger guys they've used it, but for the veterans, like Verlander with a pitch clock, I'm not sure he's gonna love that.
No, that's going to be now a guy that throws, 2 or 3 pitches 90% of the time. That's fine. But what if Marcus Stroman, or what if you Darvish is up there and is like, well, I'd really like you to put down the one of the 11 pitches I throw. We're kind of working through it and the clock's ticking. So, I am friendly with some Padres. I don't work with Darvish, but that would be a real challenge. That would be a guy you'd almost want to script a bit ahead of time.
Yeah, I think I was looking into, or I think I just saw on Twitter. I'm not sure who posted it. It was just like, I think it might have been you, honestly, like pitch times, but or pitch time between pitches, right? And it was like Ohtani was one of the slowest guys on the mound. You figure with his athleticism, right? You may be able to thwart some of the distractions and some of the changes that come about. But for somebody who's, again, like a Verlander, somebody who's so ingrained in what they do, it's going to be really interesting. And I think it's going to be interesting to watch the run game. I think in the stretch, you might see pitchers deviate their performance a little bit, able to throw strikes. Maybe early in the season we see that. Always, with a 7-month season, right? You're always going to see changes in April and May, and then guys kind of get their groove in, and then in the dog days of summer. But I think it's going to be really, really interesting to see how the older pitchers adjust throughout the season, and then hopefully by the playoffs we'll get back to a kind of baseball that we're all used to, and then helps the fan experience, hopefully.
Right. It was definitely startling when I got into all this. I'm a huge baseball fan my whole life, but of course couldn't just pick up the phone and talk to big leaguers. So there was so much I didn't know about what's going on and how things have changed. But still startling today is, like, you watch a game and you see a guy throw a pitch. Why did he throw that pitch? How much did the pitcher have to do with it? Is he just waiting to pick the second guy I worked with was Tommy Malone. And, I asked him, like, who decides what you throw? And he's like, what do you mean? I throw whatever the catcher calls. And like, do you ever shake him off or anything? It's like, I haven't shaken a guy off in 10 years. I want to throw a pitch with conviction, and I'm choosing to team up with my battery mate and hope he's right about that and just go all in on that. And that's rough, man. I mean, imagine you're in your third year and you're getting ready to be arbitration eligible, and if you have a bad year, your team's probably going to dump you, or you're going to make $4 or $5 million next year. I mean, you kind of grab the wheel a little bit here, and you can only fool yourself so much if you're trying to do something with conviction. When you've given all of the authority to make that determination to somebody else. So,
yeah, I know. Keep going.
No, I'm just going to say, what if in line with that conviction, if you're like, I'm going to throw this pitch here, but I need the catcher to know because he has to catch the damn thing. And I got 15 seconds and counting for us to communicate that, because I can't just throw it. He won't, I mean, you can't catch. You've seen what happens when guys get crossed up. I mean,
Oh yeah.
obviously you can't. So that's going to just be fascinating. You're going to have many, many times that I won't appreciate, no one will appreciate fully unless you're in it, that a pitch was thrown that the pitcher didn't want to throw. And that didn't happen as much last year because you could just sit there and do this thing until you did it and step off and scratch yourself and move on. But now it's like you have to throw it. So it's going to be so different, and the growing pains are going to be evident, and then they will go into the season for sure.
Yeah, I know. When I used to pitch back, in high school and before that, it was always like, if I wasn't 100% confident in what I was throwing, I would shake and I would shake and I would shake. And luckily, I had a catcher who I played with for a bunch of years, so we kind of like knew each other, right? But for guys who are constantly changing, or new catchers getting called up, or veteran guys who might be a little bit more ingrained in how they wanted to call their games, it's going to be, that battle is always going to be there a little bit, in a league that's so volatile with player transactions and all that stuff. So
Right.
But yeah. So
yeah, the confidence is a big selling point for using Codify, and Liam Hendricks is a good example. When he reached out back in 2019, that was his big problem, is I'm this wild animal, this Tasmanian devil guy, and I can feel this energy I want to channel, but damn it, I'm hearing so many different things from everybody and I just can't really get behind it. And he's the perfect example of how someone can use this stuff to bolster their confidence. Now, God willing, he comes back from his bout with cancer. But we talked a bit about this already, of, okay, what's this mean with the pitch clock? But he's got 3 pitches he's going to throw. It's not going to be so tough. The catchers are not arguing with him. He tells them ahead of time what he's going to do. And if it's Grandal back there, they might wrestle a little bit, but ultimately, it doesn't take that long to shake off 2 pitches to get to the one you want to throw. So some guys won't be so bad, but others, I just don't know. I haven't talked to Marcus Stroman about this, or some of the other guys that have 6 pitches, but I don't know what you're going to do. I don't know if you guys remember the All-Star game, but was it Nestor Cortez had the microphone in his glove?
the mic'd up, yeah.
I'd love to see. Look, I get we can't hear it. That was awesome that we could. I understand that, but it would be great to have that as a kind of way to get around this and keep the game flowing, and not be too much of a penalty on the pitcher.
Yep.
Yeah, I definitely think that if they could somehow incorporate more of that, like into game, I don't know how you would do it without, like, there's integrity stuff and all that, but that watching Nestor and Trevino communicate like that was awesome. Transitioning into Twitter, I'm a big Twitter guy. I'm always on Twitter. What's your approach to Twitter? Like, how do you, dig up these stats and, like, find, like, it's so, I was going through like those baseball coincidences the other day. Like, those were insane. Like, what's your approach to that? Cause I just personally am very curious, cause I'm always on Twitter.
I was dragged into Twitter. I think it's June 2020. And really the selling point to get over there was that there were pitchers that used Twitter that didn't use Instagram. And frankly, Codify is pure word of mouth. I can't, there's guys I can't contact directly, like all of them, but Dan Straley in the beginning. So it's all word of mouth. The reason I came over to Twitter was that, to get some exposure for Codify and get people to see. Now, since I was 7, I had A season tickets when I was 7. I don't know why the hell my parents would let me go ever, occasionally by myself to Oakland.
Gosh.
Yeah, but I cut my teeth on the A's and baseball stats. And so if you see some of that stuff coming from that's a lifetime of being just enamored with baseball stats. I still pull up this, like, these guys, I'm like, who the hell is this guy? It's like, he led the National League in saves in 1969. It wasn't that long ago. And like, I never even heard of this guy. And I've been looking at baseball stats my whole life. So that's part of what I love about this sport is just you can learn something new every day. what was the coincidence when the father-son combo pitched, what was it, to Hank Aaron when he had 755, and then the guy that gave up 756 to Bonds, that was a father-son duo? Like, I never heard that before. How did I never hear that
Yeah, like
before?
how's that even possible? It's
I
crazy.
have no idea. But we've heard them, and they're just so I mean, you can see from my page that it's an ocean of stuff, and I try to keep it interesting. I don't know how well I do that, but it's a good outlet. I'll be helping guys throughout the day. I don't know when the phone's going to ring, or I'm developing a new system or whatever, and run something. And I'm like, well, that's going to run for 5 minutes. Let me go see if I can come up with something interesting enough to post. And sometimes it hits and sometimes it doesn't. Just trying to keep it entertaining though. And if nothing else, it's therapeutic just to talk about baseball, because I love baseball.
Always, always, always.
Yeah.
So getting back, I guess, into the heat maps,
Mhm.
and you mentioned that it was kind of some growing pains at the beginning there.
All right.
How did you go about determining what direction you wanted to go in, whether it be the type of metrics that you wanted to show people, whether
Right.
it be just like pure run value or xwOBA or whiff percentage or something like that?
Mhm.
I guess where did you start to hone in on what you thought were the best metrics and the best way to display that?
Yeah, I mean, the first ones, I'll admit, were Straley centric. Definitely trying to make him happy. I had no intent. I didn't have any fantasy then of ever helping anybody else. It wasn't even a thing back then. So it's like, let's just help cousin Dan or whatever. But he saw the Fangraph one, and the one he liked the most was the run value one on Fangraphs at the time. But he'd have other questions like, underneath run value, how much of that is a whiff rate or a swing rate or a called strike if he takes it rate, or all the different things that are under that. And sometimes guys want to dig in that, and other times they're like, I don't give a damn, I'm just trying to prevent runs, boil it down for me. So in the beginning, it was definitely make Dan happy while you're helping him make him better, which wasn't too difficult. But once you started adding Doolittle and Treinen and getting into these other guys that never influenced any pitch they've ever thrown before, just trying to come up with a system that gave the ability to guys to dig into it if they wanted to, or if they had the capacity to do it as well, or just step back and go, hey, wow, I have 4 square feet of blue with my fastball to this guy. I don't really need to know anything else. I don't need to see my 0-2 maps or my 3-1 maps or whatever. Some guys do, and at least half of those guys I try to talk out of that, because there are guys that they want to drink out of the fire hose, and it's a bad idea. So I don't know if I answered your question well enough, but the Codify colors on the maps are determined by a very, very customized run prevention value kind of metric that does consider the value of anything that can happen in an at-bat, including, unfortunately, all of the billions of ways that a baseball might be hit. And it's looking at probabilities of all those things happening, down to the point of, like, if you throw an inside fastball to this guy, what are the odds of him hitting it off the opposite field foul pole? Okay, there's 0. But there are probabilities of all those things. It breaks the every field down into tiny areas, and so what are the odds of it being hit here, and all the different ways it could get there, whether it's popped up or it's a pain in the ass, frankly. But that's why you're talking to me, because it took the time in the off season to build it, and every off season try to make it better. You want a system that's changing, but not just changing just because some guy I just threw what was that DeGrom one that he threw to Jazz, and it was like 100,
Oh
101,
yeah,
0-2, 101, a couple inches above the zone.
it was like
It's like,
perfectly located.
right, so you're going to tell him that was a bad pitch? Like, so my system is trying to recognize bad luck and not red up an area that shouldn't be redded up, and vice versa. And I think that's a big selling point to Codify. Liam Hendricks uses me mostly for that. Is something happens, and he'll call me and go, okay, my homework was, if something bad happens, was it bad luck? Was it bad planning? Was it bad execution? And that's a lot of what this helps you find. Go, hey, I threw a good pitch. The guy just beat me. I mean, it's these. I don't know if you noticed, there's a guy up there making millions of dollars swinging a piece of lumber, and he's going to hit it sometimes. So That happens a lot. These kids get away from good pitches in good spots because they have a couple of stings, and this helps them not do that.
I feel like especially with Liam Hendricks, like
Mhm.
such a dominant. I mean, we can all agree here he's top 3 relief pitcher in the sport. Um, and I feel like there's so many times where, I mean, think as a Yankees fan, selfishly thinking about the game in Iowa, right?
All
The
right.
Field of
and
Dreams.
Field of
Yeah,
Dreams,
it's
right?
horrible.
And like, I can't remember exactly what pitches he threw to give up those home runs, but he's had a couple of blow-ups in big situations, and you just say, dang, like I feel bad for him because you know how good he is, and
Mhm.
it just bad luck versus bad execution versus bad planning is an excellent point. So
It's hilarious. You look at, if you roll up his numbers since 2019, they're superior to everyone's. It's just I don't know if you do. I expect a lot from him. He expects a lot from himself, and we definitely set the bar somewhere different for Liam. I'm glad he's gotten through well enough with Chicago. I knew it was going to be rough there, and then there's been seasons where he gives up a homer early, and here's a lot of stuff. But yeah, I mean, I gave up a home run, and sometimes he'll look at the metrics and go, yeah, I didn't spin that one very well. And it was in a good spot. It was a good pitch to the right guy, but I didn't execute the pitch right. And yeah, it's great. But he doesn't have any of that from the time that he decides what he's going to throw to the time he lets it go. That doubt is gone. And if you watch, you can see it. And it's great that he's been able to channel that. He's an amazing guy. For sure.
One only needed to watch the 2021 All-Star game for a few
Yeah,
moments to hear how passionate he is.
right.
All right, a few more questions as we kind of round up here, pun intended. Other ideas. So I was kind of thinking before the podcast, what's a new angle that Michael could add, and I was thinking hitter approach. And I don't know how that would feed into what you give a pitcher before a game if we overcomplicate things, talking about drinking from a fire hose, right?
Mhm.
But if we're going to delineate between 2-strike approaches, run around third, less than 2 outs, things like that, trying to avoid hitting into a double play.
Mhm.
How does that? I mean, is there a world where you see that's where we start to break down pitcher performance?
Yeah, there are a couple of pitchers that get I think the most is a set of 10 different types of maps, 10 different, there's kind of the overall that most guys get, but get specialized situations. Obviously, if I worked with a team, it would be a hell of a lot easier to do this on the fly. Here I am sending a set of maps to a guy in the morning saying, good luck tonight. I don't even know who the hell's playing. I don't even know who the umpires are. It's the first game of a series. They keep that secret. There's a lot of opportunity to specialize and dig into all that stuff. And frankly, I think it'd be amazing to sit there in the dugout with a binder full of maps and some dice and just like, I'm going to randomize your pitch selection within, I'm going to let it be biased by how blue your pitches are in every area. No one can ever, that's what we did with the scripting, by the way. We randomized within blueness, but no one can intercept this unless they steal the sign. And that's a big deal of working, like I said, with the catchers of adapting to those weird situations. You see infielders shuffle, you see like you said, a tight situation, you're like, yeah, I mean, this isn't the third inning, I have to get this guy out and not let that run score, stuff like that. There's a ton of opportunity there, but there's only so much you can do when you're giving a guy intel in the morning of a night game.
Yeah, that's true.
So plus, he can't take too much out there with them either. So what they tend to do is ask. So I see blue in my map. I know, like Gosman, when he got to Toronto, like he turned around. There, okay, 4 outfielders. I got 3 infielders over there. Like I'm not going to change how I'm pitching, right? You're adapting to how I pitch. I can't change how I pitch to adapt to how you're adapting to how I pitch, or we're going to chase our tail into the dugout. That's a big thing. Like, so what do I do? And It's going to be, you were talking about being interested in this, in all the changes. Watch what the teams do with the shifts and how they try to get around this rule. I mean, you can only, yeah, you have to have two infielders on each side on the dirt when the guy lets go of the ball, but let's see what happens.
I can't wait for the first team to have someone sprint over from like
It will happen.
just to the right of second base. Like I can't wait to see it. Yeah,
it will happen. It'll happen on opening day.
that's gonna be awesome.
Yeah.
I got one more for you. Do you have like a favorite success story or maybe a favorite like picture you've worked with where like just like a wow moment, like wow, like I can't believe you know, I helped this guy improve. Is there a name or a couple names that stick out to you?
Oh gosh. I get so attached to pretty much everybody I work with. I mean, Straley from the get-go, that this is not a guy that should have pitched that long.
That's actually really interesting to know because he had a long, successful career.
Right. If you haven't, go look at his 2014, 2015, and all the indicators are like, this guy's, I think he's done. And the teams kept telling him, drop your arm. He went to the Cubs and the Astros, and they're like, if you drop your arm down, you could throw 93. And it's like, yeah, Dan, I'd rather have you throw 91 and get, you know, some rise on your fastball and throw it over the bat. So that was a big one. Certainly, Blake Trinan was a huge. If I ever made a list that you're describing, he'd probably be on there. We kind of unlocked him. Everyone would like have him on his list of like the filthiest stuff. Like, where's the stats to back it up? Where's the production? And he didn't really seem to understand how guys were beating him. A lot of lefties were flipping it out to left field, and he just kept throwing it there. And you know, they told him his slider wasn't sexy because it didn't sweep much and this and that. Like, dude, look, let me just show you something. And if you commit to this, do this for a month and see what happens. And you saw that one season he had. That was the first Codify season. It was like insane. So that was a big one. I mean, that's a guy I think I hurt myself watching, you know, because get so into it, just seeing a guy dominate and knowing he was following a plan. But that's what's cool is like, you know, I can't throw like that anymore. I don't know if you guys can. Probably not. And it's great to be a spotter whispering into the sniper's ear, if you will, and just, you know, seeing him go. Doolittle too. I was a huge A's guy, you know. These are the early guys, but Doolittle's a great guy, and just seeing him. I don't know if you guys know this, but he wasn't a pitcher. He was in college, but the A's drafted him as an outfielder. And he actually put up some, if you see his numbers, you'd never think it was him doing it before he got injured. You're like, how does this guy hitting home runs? But his story coming around and reinventing himself and learning that his high fastball was a lethal weapon and this alien pitch. And there are guys that you personally root for. There aren't, we don't really have anybody we work with at Codify that we dislike personally. To be honest, I've been surprised at how nice most of the guys are. So in turn, you tend to go pull for them. I know people you work with and you go to school with, you guys, you know, there's some guys you like, and there's, you know, maybe you don't dislike, but you're neutral about them. But most of these guys are surprisingly, I guess, I don't know why I'm surprised, but just good people. People that don't know Liam Hendricks and his charitable work and talk to him off the field. If you only saw him on the field, you'd be like, yeah, all right, that guy's got a problem, you know. It's probably not someone I want around my kids or whatever. No, he's the nicest guy in the world. So anyway,
it's funny how that competitive drive can make people seem crazy, but you know, it's really just the heat of competition is really what's going on there.
Right. It'd be hard to make a list. I mean, there's so many guys. Honestly, most people don't reach out to Codify when they're doing really well because they don't want to fiddle with it. So the Codify client list and the history is littered with guys who are like, I'm kind of in trouble. It's not all of them, but it's 3/4 of them. And those are the good stories where you're like, dude, you have what it takes now. I know they're trying to get you to change this, and we can change it if you want, but you have enough to get guys out right now consistently. And it's always super fulfilling as a baseball fan to be able to do that. And then you learn something about the guy. It's like, okay, you know, he has 4 kids, or, he got no bonus because he was drafted low, and he's, that's great. He made $500,000 last year, but that's all he's ever made, and he's going to sell shoes if he doesn't make the team this year. And there is a personal boost to that, to being able to make somebody's life better too.
That's absolutely true. Well, in the interest of time, I'd like to wrap things up. I don't know if Matt, you have any other ideas? No. Anything from you, Michael?
No, you can tell I've been thinking about this and get a little start rattling a little bit. Too much coffee in the morning, but thank you for the invite, and I'm looking forward to this season very much. I think we're gonna see a product that unlike anything we've ever seen, and I think in general, it's going to be good for the game.
I hope so.
Yeah, I really hope so too. Thanks so much, Michael, for joining us. We really appreciate it, and hope you enjoy this baseball season.
Thanks again for having me, guys.